Oh, the meow. Guess what we're making? If you guessed pillow covers, you are correct, my friend. We're making 2 dope patterns for these basic pillow coverings that are really easy for first-time drafters. I'm going to show you how to make our 1-paneled, and I'm also going to show you how to make this 2-paneled pillow cover. I will also show you this optional way of putting in your zipper, which is how I like to do it, but you don't have to. So first things first, you're going to want to measure out your pillow. Mine is 20 inches by 20 inches, but I had to scale it down to 10 by 10 because it wouldn't fit in the camera frame. The supplies you will need are going to be some decorative fabric, which is going to be the front of your pillow. You also need some fabric for the back of your pillow, unless you want to use the same fabric, that's fine too. You'll also need a zipper. Mine's about 20 inches. And you will also need some interfacing. To start out, we're going to grab a piece of paper and our L-square ruler if you want to make a perfect square. You can use a ruler though if you don't have one. And I'm going to measure out my square pillow, which is going to be 10 by 10. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around my square, and it's going to be this line right here if you are using your quilter's ruler. And we're going to drag our ruler to that line. Once you get to that line, we'll go ahead and stop your ruler, make sure everything's straight, and then make your line. And bam! 1/2 inch seam allowance. You're going to want to repeat this process all the way around your square, and it should look something like this. Now you can go ahead and cut that out, and this is where things get optional. Now if you would like to, you can go ahead and cut 2 of these square pieces out and then put your zipper right along this top edge and call it a day. Or you can do what I do and make your 2-panel back side of your pillow. We're going to go ahead and use this same line that we used earlier, and we're going to go down 1 inch, making our line all the way across, and it will look something like this. So grab another piece of paper, put it underneath our pattern piece. Make sure you have room underneath that line that we drew, because you're going to be adding seam allowance to that as soon as we finish. And you're going to want to trace around this top portion of your pattern. And at the sides where our line is drawn, you're going to want to make 2 marks. I like to take my pattern tracer and just make a couple of little marks along my line just to make sure I get a very straight line. You can see the little marks from the pattern notcher going all the way across our paper. Now we're going to take our ruler, line everything up, and then we're going to make a line going straight across. And now from that line, we're going to go down and add our 1/2 inch seam allowance right underneath that line we just drew. And then you can go ahead and cut it out. And we're going to do the exact same thing by tracing the pattern, making sure you have some extra paper at the top right there, because that's where we're going to be adding our 1/2 inch seam allowance. And now we're going to repeat the process of making the 2 marks on the sides. Taking our pattern tracer, making a couple of little marks across our line. Now we line up everything with our ruler like we did before and make a straight line. And then we're also going to add our 1/2 inch seam allowance to that line. And now we're going to cut the whole pattern piece out. Now I would recommend to put some notches on the top where we just added that seam allowance, just so we know which side of this pattern our zipper goes onto. So now comes the fun part, which is cutting out our pattern pieces. So you want to line up your pattern piece along this selvage edge of your fabric. It's going to be the edge that is woven. There's no like little pieces of frayed thread or anything coming apart. So I'm working with a square pillow cover. So my grain line is going to go basically on whichever side I choose. And if you're dealing with like a rectangle or a different kind of pillow cover, you're going to want to make sure your grain line is running parallel to wherever your zipper is going, and then make that the same grain line for both sides, if that made sense. So for like our back panel, your grain line is going to be running parallel to our zipper that we put in at the very top. So once you get it all cut out, you want to make sure that you make little slits for your notches, and they're going to be very little, very small. And then you want to do the same thing with the top piece of our back panel. So I forgot to film this part, but with your top piece of your back panel, you're going to also want to use that pattern to cut out 2 pieces of interfacing. And when you have those pieces, you're going to want to take the bubbly rough side and face it down onto the wrong side of your fabric, because that's going to be the glue side, and then you want to iron that down. Now you want to take your second piece of interfacing and you want to do the same thing on your larger back panel. Once you get those 2 things fused, you're going to want to put the wrong sides together, and you're going to baste these 2 pieces together. Now to make a basting stitch, you're going to use the longest length of stitch on your machine, and you're not going to back stitch on either end because this is going to be a temporary stitch that's going to be removed later on. Now go ahead and iron the seam open and flat. So now we can go ahead and pin our zipper in, and when you're pinning this in, you want to make sure that there's about 1/2 inch space on the top and the bottom of your zipper to make sure that you don't run over the metal part of your zipper with your machine, because you're going to break your needle. It's happened to me a million times. I went ahead and did 2 stitches on both sides of the zipper just so that my threads don't start unraveling underneath my zipper. So now that we have our zipper installed, we're going to go ahead and take our basting stitches out. That way we have an actual functioning zipper. Now take your decorative fabric, and with right sides together, you're going to want to sew all the way around, leaving your zipper halfway open so you can turn this thing inside out. And if you would like, you can go ahead and serge the pillow all the way around, or you can do like a zigzag stitch, or you can use pinking shears, or you can just leave it the way it is. And now, once you figure that part of your life out, you are going to take your pillow and turn it inside out. And now you have a pillow cover. Now to make the second design, you're going to want to take that same pattern and fold it in half. And then you want to take the folded edge and you want to line that up with your selvage. Now we're going to add our 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top. I'm using my fabric pencil to go ahead and mark that line. And so now I can cut that out, and now I just cut out 2 of these pieces and sew them up the middle. Press the seam flat. And that's how you get the 2-panel design. Now you can take this and do so many things with it. You can make 4 panels, 3 panels, just continue making your basic. You can make shapes. It's really anything you want. So definitely do not throw this pattern away, because we're going to use it in the future for many different pillow covers.